you ever noticed that life can take a sudden, unexpected turn? I mean, everything can be going along just fine, and then, wham! Oh! Yeah, it reminds me of today's sermon, because last week we had a great story, but today we're going to see that there is a surprise twist that comes out of the story, out of absolutely nowhere. Yes, sometimes life can hit you hard when you didn't see it coming. And I feel like that's kind of today's story and today's sermon. Let me remind you and bring you up to speed where we are at. Last week, we learned of a great commander of an army who sadly had leprosy. He was from a different nation, but he heard that God's prophet Elisha, with God's help, could heal people and do some amazing things. So Naaman takes his entire entourage and shows up outside of Elisha's house. And Elisha gives him this command: to go wash in the river and his leprosy will be gone. And he does. And then miraculously, all of his leprosy disappears. And then Naaman returns to Elisha praising God, and Naaman actually becomes a believer. Now, Naaman wants to pay Elisha for what Elisha has done, but Elisha refuses to accept any payment because it wasn't him who made Naaman clean. Instead, it was God who did it. So Elisha happily sends Naaman on his way, having taken nothing from him. So our story ends last week with Naaman being healed and heading off into the distance while giving praise to such an amazing God. And you can just picture this as being an amazing fairy tale ending to a movie that we enjoyed seeing. I mean, you got Naaman happily riding along away into the sunset with some cheesy music playing in the background. And you're about to stand up and leave the theater because you know credits are just a second away from rolling. You see, we thought we had this nice, perfect ending to a good story, but then this happens.
Go on. Go show mommy. I really can't believe it.
Our story becomes hijacked by a man named Gehazi. Now, this isn't the first time that Gehazi has shown up in the Bible. It's the first time he's shown up in our story, but not in the Bible. You see, Gehazi was Elijah's personal assistant and trusted friend. If you were to read a couple of chapters back, you would see that Elisha even trusted Gehazi enough to give him his staff to go and heal a sick child with. So Gehazi is somebody who's been around Elijah, helping him heal people for a while now. And Gehazi knows that Elisha doesn't accept anything for his healings because he does not want to take credit for what God has miraculously done. And normally, Gehazi's okay with this, but this time, not so much. Let's read what happens in verse 19. After Naaman had traveled some distance, Gehazi, the servant of Elisha, the man of God, said to himself, "My master was too easy on Naaman, this Aramean, by not accepting him from what he brought. As surely as the Lord lives, I will run after him and get something from him." So Gehazi thinks to himself, this is bogus. This foreigner brought all kinds of clothes and money, and Elisha doesn't take a thing. Now, I can understand not wanting to take it from your own people, but this is a foreigner. Well, if Elisha's not going to take anything from him, I guess I might as well get myself something. Yeah. Now, here's the thing. Gehazi is working for Elisha, so he's got a very good job. He's respected because he is second in charge to a prophet, a pretty powerful prophet, notable prophet. This prophet is highly favored by God, who provides for all of their needs, and if he plays his cards right, then who knows? He might be the next prophet after Elisha. So Gehazi, he's not lacking in anything, but it does seem like maybe he's desiring some extra things. You see, Naaman was a wealthy man, and it only seems fair that Naaman shares some of that wealth with the little guy, right? Yeah, do you know what that's called when you have enough but you want even more? Politics. No, sorry, it's called Disney. No, my bad. It's called greed. That's the word that we're looking for, greed. Greed, the desire for more. Did you know that the desire for more can turn a good person into a bad person? I see it all the time when a loved one with money passes away. It seems like even the best people in the best of families can sometimes struggle with love when a loved one passes away and greed takes hold. Yeah, greed's a funny thing. It can make you do things that are kind of really outside of your character. I believe that Gehazi was probably a good person. I mean, he would have to be the prophet's second in command. But greed corrupts good and evil alike. And Gehazi's greed motivates him to go after Naaman. So Gehazi goes running towards Naaman as Naaman is leaving the area, and Naaman sees him coming, gets down off his chariot to see what's the matter, and Naaman says, "Is everything all right, Gehazi?" And Gehazi responds, "Everything's all right. My master sent me to say, 2 young men from the company of prophets have just come from the hill country of Ephraim. Please give them a talent of silver and 2 sets of clothing." You see, that's what greed does, doesn't it? Pepe Rodriguez, he was a guy who would regularly sneak across the border into South Texas. And then he would rob a bank and then escape back across the border so that he couldn't be caught. Well, the story goes that eventually Texas lawmen cornered Pepe in a Mexican bar. And since Pepe didn't speak any English, they asked the bartender to translate. Well, with guns drawn, they told the bartender, "Tell him that if he doesn't turn over the stolen money right now, we'll shoot him dead on the spot." And the bartender translated. Pepe started shaking in fear. In Spanish, Pepe said, "Tell them the money is in the town well. The loot is hidden in a pouch behind the 17th stone, counting down from the handle." The bartender turned to the Rangers and said in English, "Pepe is a very brave man. He says, 'You're a bunch of stinking pigs,' and he's not afraid to die." Yeah, greed. Terrible thing, isn't it? Greed makes you lie. Greed gets you so focused on what you want that it throws everything else out the window to get it. Gehazi shows up and says, "Hey, Naaman, 2 guys showed up," who didn't, and that Elisha sent him, who he didn't, and that Elisha changed his mind and requested 2 sets of clothes for these guys and 2 talents of silver, which he didn't. Yes, and you think, okay, but that's not too bad, I guess, right? He only wants a couple of shirts and a couple talents of silver, whatever that is. Let me clear some things up for you, because it doesn't immediately translate. The shirts that he asked for, they were the finest clothing that was made back then. It'd be worth a lot more than a $5 t-shirt from Walmart. Actually, I'm not even sure there are $5 t-shirts at Walmart anymore. Seriously, when did Walmart go so bougie? I don't get it. Okay, the shirts that Gehazi asked for would be like somebody giving you 2 Dolce & Gabbana suits. I mean, they were worth a lot of money. On top of this, he requested 2 talents of silver. A talent of silver is a measurement of weight that is equal to 75 pounds. So he's asking for 2 talents of silver, or 150 pounds of silver. On today's market, that would sell for approximately $150,000. Gehazi's making out pretty good in this deal. And maybe you're thinking, okay, Pastor, I hear you, but this one doesn't apply to me. You got to take 3 zeros off that number, and that's what I have in my bank account. Yeah, I get it. I get it. You actually have to take 4 zeros off that number to reach what I have in mind. But greed for money, it's not only for the rich. You can be poor and still have greed for money. If you desire it, if you lust over it, if you want more of it, that's greed. If you eat up every overtime hour so that you can get all of it that you can and sacrifice other things that should be more important, that's greed. If you tip poorly because you deserve it more than they do, that's greed. If you spend more money on toys for yourself than you do on helping the needy, that's greed. And Christians are greedy just like anybody else. And that's what so many churches are banking on too. They try to lure you through the doors by convincing you that if you go there, you will become more rich and successful than ever. They're catering to Christian greed. And money isn't the only thing that you can be greedy for anyway. Greed is simply defined as a selfish desire. So what other sorts of things can we be greedy for? Well, you can be greedy for recognition. Haven't you ever had one of those friends that can't speak a sentence without bragging about themselves and their accomplishments? Yes, they're greedy for recognition. Wanting to hog the spotlight, that's a form of greed. You can be greedy for someone's time. Have you ever been jealous because someone should have been spending more time with you and less time with whatever they were doing? You can be greedy for love. You can be in a relationship that is all about you and has nothing to do with what you can give to the other person, but instead what you can get out of it. You can be a greedy friend. You can make your friendship all about you and really nothing about the other person. You can be greedy for stuff. What do you have collections of at home? You could have more than you would ever need and still want some extra. That's what greed is. Greed is anything that you want selfishly more of. And because of that desire, you're willing to sacrifice things in order to get it. And many times, sadly, those things we're willing to sacrifice are our morals. And that's precisely what Gehazi did. He had to have this money, and he didn't care what he had to do to get it. 3 times he lies to Naaman's face. And Naaman has no reason to doubt him. So what does he do? He sends 150 pounds of silver and 2 designer suits back with Gehazi, and he even has his guys carry it back for him. So Gehazi stashes it in his house, and he thinks he's gotten away free and clear. It isn't until Elisha calls for him. Elisha says, "Where have you been, Gehazi?" And Gehazi answers, your servant didn't go anywhere." Yet greed wouldn't even let him tell the truth when he was called out. 2 Kings 5:26. Here's what happens. But Elijah said to him, "Was not my spirit with you when the man got down from his chariot to meet you? Is this the time to take money or to accept clothes, olive groves, vineyards, flocks, herds, or men servants or maid servants? Naaman's leprosy will cling to you and your descendants forever." Then Gehazi went from Elisha's presence, and he was leprous as white as snow. Quite a twist, huh? Do you know how many relationships have been ruined over greed? Do you know how many greedy people live unfulfilled lives? You see, greed is a mirage. It makes you think, if only I could get this, or if only I could get that, then I would finally be happy. But folks, stuff does not bring happiness. It's never going to work. Then why are we so stuck focusing on what we don't have? So much so that we miss what we do have. That's right there, right now, right in front of us. You know what they say? The grass is always greener on the other side. But the real truth is, the grass is always greener over the septic tank. Gehazi learned his lesson the hard way about greed. How about you? Thank God we have his mistake to learn from, so that we don't have to be doomed to repeat it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Take care. God bless. Hope to see you soon.